was January 5th, 2024, and there's been a lot of updates with respect to these videos and the investigation. So if you just kind of scroll down to the first pinned tweet here and show this video, one of the biggest revelations that was found is that the video on the right that is kind of you can see the plane being shot in close in the circle there is actually something called wide area motion imagery, WAMI. And it's specifically Gorgon Stare Increment 2, which is produced by the U.S. Air Force. This is actually...
So we got to hold on. Very, very, very jargony. What is Gorgon Stare? What is this?
Well, Gorgon Stare is a brand, but Gorgon Stare is basically, there is a drone. There's actually two drones here, two different videos. One drone is horizontal to the plane, and we're seeing that in a color FLIR, which is why you see this color. It's actually nighttime that you're seeing there. The white video that you see on the right is a drone that's above the plane, actually loitering around. They're both MQ-9 Reaper drones. And these drones, they can go in like a hexagonal pattern above an area, and they're taking photos all the time, like 300 photos several times per second. That data beams through relay satellites to ground-based computers, and then it actually produces Google Earth video playback. And it's a real-time plus rewind capabilities. So somebody logs into the system, they see a big, huge field of view. They press somewhere on the screen, that will open up a window. That's the window we're seeing in this. They can move the window around and track the object they want to track. And then at the end of the video, now in this particular version, you don't see it, there's a mouse cursor that comes on the screen and they close the window at the end. I just wanted to show people this version because you can see how both videos are perfectly in sync. You can even watch how the orbs are perfectly aligned in both videos as well. And so this is huge because previously I was looking, how do you prove these videos are real? I had found the leaker of the videos, a guy named Edward C. Lin. He legally changed his name around the same time I was on your podcast, actually. After I started naming him as the guy that leaked these videos, because nobody knows he's the guy that leaked the videos. And I realized that I don't need him after I found the Gorgon Stare revelation. The reason being, since that's Gorgon Stare Increment 2, that was only announced a couple months after the plane disappeared, which means that Gorgon Stare has been in use for 10 years. The number of Air Force personnel who've seen Gorgon Stare or intel people who've seen it has to be thousands. That means thousands of people know that that is legitimate wide area motion imagery footage, and they're just not saying anything about it. So at this point, anybody who thinks the videos are fake, all you have to do is go to anybody in the Air Force who's seen Gorgon Stare and say, is that Air Force Gorgon Stare wide area motion imagery? So that's the big revelation. And just from the science perspective, I love that you're clicking and pausing it here because I wanted Dr. Hugh to see this, is that these dark lines that are in front of the orbs, I've actually been able to figure out what's going on with these orbs. These orbs are actually a hypersonic U.S. Air Force design. Now, I don't know if Boeing or Lockheed Martin's the defense contractor. It's probably one of the two of them. But what they are is they're a miniature particle accelerator. They're in hypersonic design that's based on the scramjet designs. And it's basically just a tube that's a drone. And this tube sucks air in through the front. And they use super powerful superconducting magnets along the tube. And it turns it into a particle accelerator that can compress the air or compress the plasma to cause fusion to occur. And so what this allows is they can have a mechanism where they can expel propellant behind them and have an intercept mode. And then when they lock into their object, they have a forward-facing laser that they can engage. And this acts as like a forward-facing tractor beam, a light sail without an actual sail. They can pull it forward. And then all they have to do is do the calculations to figure out how fast the orb is moving and have the expellant or the laser in front match that speed. And now you've created constant momentum. You're basically sailing through the sky at the maximum efficiency possible for something that, a rocket or any type of propelled device. The last thing about them is that these powerful magnets also, we can see if you watch the heat signatures of those orbs, there's a very clear green part in the orbs. When the orbs first appear next to the plane, it's all green. It's because there's different modes. If they have the green mode on, those are the electrons. And what do electrons do? They repel. So if I'm flying through the sky and my electrons are in the way, it acts like a wall slowing me down. So they can use those to control how fast they move. And then the electrons begin to move, like this green shape begins to shift and move around. That's because the combined magnetic field around the plane is causing the electrons within the actual orbs to shift around. They might even be able to move it on demand through the fluid motion of the plasma to cause lift through Lorentz forces as well.
In one of these frames, it looks like the sphere somehow overlaps the wrong side of the plane.
Oh, this has actually been like stabilized or something. So the reason this isn't the original version you're seeing here. So in the original version, there's no like cutting through or what have you. In fact, in the original version, you can even see the orbs cut through the smoke of the back of the plane. Because that's smoke coming out of the plane in this video. The whole thing was a CIA operation. For the people that want to know.
Well, why though?
Yeah, so the why is that, and this is the high level overview. You can find all the evidence and details on my Twitter and on my YouTube streams, but this was a CIA operation against China by the United States. China would have been taking the 20 Freescale semiconductor engineers. They would have been trying to force them to defect, get the technology from them essentially. So what we've got going on here is that China, United States, probably Russia, we're all trying to figure out this technology. China's trying to steal it from us. And we conducted this elaborate counter-espionage operation, which includes a fire on the plane in the cargo bay. We can see the heat signature right there a second ago. And why they did this orb thing to the plane, they basically forced the plane to turn around. They get it away from China into the Nicobar Islands. We have coordinates. We know exactly where this is happening. And then they deploy these orbs right before the plane is actually about to crash into the water. This plane's flying very low. Those are low altitude clouds.
And you're saying they teleported the entire plane somewhere else?
The plane. They teleported that plane. That is not an annihilation we're seeing happen to the plane. We have to have conservation in physics all the time. So if something disappears from over here, it's got to reappear somewhere else over here. It's actually a closed loop teleportation protocol, meaning that there's a point A and a point B. Like, you know, in some of the sci-fi movies, like if they have like a warp gate and you have to go through that warp gate, that's what they're actually doing.
But so in your view, this version of teleportation is actually moving it in a higher dimension or moving it through space-time?
And that's what we're going to talk about here today is how is this all actually possible? And how is it possible, like what we just saw there, that a plane can just vanish and almost look like it doesn't even displace the background? And the answer to this is gravity wave.
What's the when this happens, there's this big burst.
Yep.
Now, there have been people claiming that this is just a stock graphic that can be used by anybody with video editing software, and they claim to have found the source of it in a video game and then compared it to an old 90s DOS video game.
Yeah, I remember that. The shockwave debunk. Yeah, it doesn't match at all. It really doesn't. I mean, just go ahead and do a pixel comparison or do a shape comparison. It's similar, obviously. I think that somebody just did a reverse image search, you know, and they found an effect. The problem is you look at that effect up, it doesn't even have the same number of frames. The stock effect has like 7 frames. There's only 4 frames in our thing. None of the frames actually match at all. They're like, oh, well, they just did some compositing to flip it around or what have you. Well, okay, let me make it simple. Who's the guy that did it, right? I've got billions of impressions. These videos are famous. They're making me money because I'm putting them on my YouTube channel. Nobody's copyrighting.
And the person who would have been alleged to have fabricated could simply just come forward and...
Anytime they want. And we had a $150,000 bounty for a while going on. Guys, there is no hoaxer of the videos. I get it, and this is what people do, is that they don't want to believe something's real, so they come up with like, oh, this looks like this, therefore it must be this or that.
You know the funniest thing about it is, I keep seeing these stories where they're like, this has already been debunked, and then they reference some YouTube crew, and I'm like, in journalism, the fact that an expert says I disagree with it is not called a debunking, it's called a counter opinion.
Exactly.
So if they said, I looked at it and my expert opinion is that it's CGI, I need only then one person who's a CGI expert to say no, and now it's a moot point. That's why it's not debunking anything. Yep. And that's why it's typically hard to debunk things. I'm not trying to make it seem like you can, you know, it's impossible. It's an easy thing to do. It could just be very difficult, if it is, to prove to people who want to believe it.
I think that the scientific method, one issue I have with the scientific method is that they tend to say just because you can't reproduce something, that means it's not real. Just because we can't detect it, that means it's not real. They're attempting to debunk potential with the you know, the phenomenon that they're unable to replicate the potential. So I agree.
So and that's what you're right, actually. And that's how is this possible? The answer is 0 point energy. And you say, okay, the first question is, if there is this big answer that allows teleportation, free energy to be possible,